sponsoring various functions throughout the sessions. First order of business, there'll be a number of items for us to vote on today. The first will be the adoption of our minutes from the 70th AGM. First of all, only registered, retired, and life members in good standing may vote. Would all registered members please raise their hands so we can ensure that we have quorum? I would like to ask Mike LaRocque, our association's Director of Practice and Stewardship, to count the members present to ensure we have quorum of at least 40. We're good? Thank you, sir. As a reminder, when moving and seconding a motion, please stand and state your name. So first order is adoption of the minutes. Copies of the minutes have just been distributed of our 70th AGM held in Victoria in 2018. There's a copy on the desk for you to take a look at. Morgan, could you please make an initial motion on this? Thank you, Morgan. Do I have someone to second? Ian, okay, I saw Ian Emery's face first, hand up. So Ian Emery RFT seconds it. So are there any questions or discussion? Call the question. All in favor signify by raising your hand. Opposed, if any? Motion carried. I would now like to call on our CEO, Christine Gelowitz, to share the results of the 2018 as presented in our annual report. Christine?
Thanks, Robin, and thank you all for being here. I believe this is a record turnout for us at the AGM portion of our conference, and I'm really happy that it is, because it's in this session where we have the opportunity to talk with you and help you understand what it is that I do, the team that is working with me does to deliver on the mandate of the association. So it's been quite a busy year, and with that busy year was lots of challenges, but also a lot of accomplishments. As you all know, it's our duty and our responsibility to protect the public interest with respect to the practice of professional forestry. That means, as a regulator, we've got 3 big jobs to do on that front: set entrance standards and qualifications to the profession, set standards of practice and standards of conduct, and then hold our members to account for those standards of practice and conduct. That's our core regulator responsibility. We're also a professional association, and so what that means is that we work to support the membership to be competent in their practice. Things like professional development. We work together to promote good stewardship as a collective. We support the professional culture, events like this one that we're all here today. So it's my pleasure to walk through, in as brief as I can, some of the highlights from the last year. So I'm going to start off talking a bit about our goal and our objective of ensuring members are competent and executing to a high standard. So what this objective really is about, it's member competence, and the things that we do on staff around that. It's really the work that Mike LaRocque and his team does around practice guidance and the committees that support Mike, the Professional Practice Committee. It's also what we do in terms of professional development and a lot of the work there. As you can see from some of the highlights, last year in terms of peer and practice reviews, we did about 125 in 2018. By comparison, in 2017, we were at about 83. So, you know, it's not a high percentage of our membership, but it's moving in the right direction. And we have just completed a summary of the results from 2018, and we'll be looking to put that out to the membership in the next coming weeks so you can understand the learnings and insights that we gained. Another part that we do in this area is develop practice guidance. So last year We had 4 key documents that came out that you may recall, visuals around watershed assessments. We also put out some bulletins regarding managing conflicts of interest and dealing with your duty to report. So I'm just going to move to the next. So I'm going to ask Casey McCauley, who is our registrar, to actually co-deliver some parts of the presentation with me. So Casey, come on up for a couple slides.
Thanks, Christine. So this particular part of our strategic goal brings into focus as well the complaints and discipline process. And I just wanted to give you guys a few highlights. You can see some of the metrics that we're putting out there. You can also see this on page 13 of the annual report. The main message we want to say here is the complaints and discipline process is working. It's active. All of the 3 main committees that are part of the process have been engaged this past year. The new cases that we've had this year, you can see there was 5 new ones, 13 that have been ongoing. And then as well, we had 10 concerns or inquiries. So these are situations where people call us and they're saying, I'm thinking about laying a complaint against a member. And then, we have a conversation about it, but it doesn't actually come in as a formal complaint. So we kind of register that as a concern or an inquiry. 7 investigations we wrapped up this year. 2 members were disciplined. You can see those details on our webpage. And we had a couple of cases that were dismissed partway through the process. As far as the new cases go, they were all related to the members' compliance with other pieces of legislation. So they weren't conduct complaints. 2 orders written. And generally we get about 2 to 3 times as many inquiries as we do cases. So a lot of those inquiries, we don't ever enter the process, and we don't publish anything about them. The next slide here, this just gives you a bit of a breakdown of where the source of complaints, where they come from. So just over half of them come in from other members, towards other members. The public also calls us and says, they have a concern. They put in complaints. It's about a third. And then that smaller triangle there is when the ABCFP launches the complaint. When there's information brought to us, whether it's through the Forest Practices Board or other avenues, and we take the action directly through the Office of the President. The public as well, it includes other members of other professions. So we track that internally, but for this purpose, we categorize them as from the public. I want to make sure people understand that the principles of fairness, administrative fairness that go into our process, there's no presumption of guilt. So even if you bring allegations to the profession that are really quite compelling or troubling, there's no presumption until it goes through the whole process and we get to the end of it before any determination is made. I think another piece of this is, what are we trying to do with this process? We want members to also learn from it. We want to hold members accountable. We want to see corrective actions where necessary as well. A policy that Council put out a number of years ago is that anybody who's found to be in breach will have their name published. And that's probably one of the biggest deterrents, because we're a relatively small community. The people don't want their names out there when something happens. So that's a big disincentive to not end up in this process. In the future, I think you can expect to see improved reporting from us on this. We've been ramping up a lot on the admissions side, and the compliance side is part of our business. It's every bit as important. And we want to do more reporting on it, more public reporting, more summaries, that kind of thing. I think we also need to evaluate more options for alternative dispute and for conflict resolution between members. Because a lot of the interpersonal stuff, they don't really make great complaints. They're people that have a dispute. The allegations and the alleged breaches are hard to determine. And I think we need to have other alternatives for that as well. Are we back to you now? All right. But I'll be back.
You thought we'd make it complicated by going back and forth, see if we can mess this up or not. So the next area of business I want to just give you some quick highlights in is around the work that we do around forest stewardship and forest stewardship advocacy. We do have a stewardship committee, and we also have, it's part of Mike LaRocque's responsibility and Paul Nuttall's responsibility, and we look at things that are coming forward. We use our stewardship committee to identify the things that are fitting with our mandate, fitting with our objectives, where we should spend our efforts around advocacy. So a few of the top highlights from the last year and the accomplishments that we had. You heard from the minister earlier today about the inventory review, the blue panel that went through last year. We participated in that process. We made a 10-page submission to that, as well as spent time with the committee doing interviews. At the start of the year, of course, the professional reliance review was full in play, and we decided that we would make a stakeholder submission, and that submission identified 18 recommendations where we thought there was opportunity to improve a number of factors that would enhance how professional reliance was delivered. 6 of those recommendations were things that we ourselves, the ABCFP, could do different and better in order to strengthen professional reliance, and some for the other partners in the professional reliance model. We submitted a 31-page submission on the BC wildfire and flood review that was ongoing. And we also participated in a few different radio interviews, a few around the role of forest professionals in wildfire management, as well as talking about professional reliance and the opportunity to improve that model for the public and to enhance public trust. So the next area I'd like to talk about is some of the work that we do in order to reach out to the public around our goal of enhancing trust. We had a council meeting yesterday, and we have lay councillor Gordon Prest who is joining us, and we talked a lot about you can't enhance trust if people don't even know who you are. And I think it really characterizes the approach we've been taking over the last couple of years around our public outreach. A couple of years ago, we shifted out of using and doing as much paper, like newspaper and stuff like that, spending our efforts advertising there, articles there, and instead shifted into social media a little bit more wholeheartedly. The first year that we shifted there, it was really about just getting our name out there, creating a followership of what we are doing. This past year, we profiled a number of our award winners, actually our Distinguished Forest Award winners. And we really saw our numbers really jumping up from that first year. So we're starting to grow that awareness. People know who we are. Once the awareness is there and people are following us, then we have an opportunity to decide what is the message we want the public to hear from us. And that'll be what we're looking at as we come up into this next year. Another piece that we do in this area is our awards program. Tonight's a celebration of our award recipients. We have 18 award recipients tonight. The reason we started doing this is that it is really important that we showcase the great work that professionals do. We need to show that to the public. We all know that a bad news story spreads so quickly. It is so much harder to tell the good stories. Our awards program is an opportunity to tell those good stories, to showcase when people do exceptional work. And so we're really proud to see that there was 18 recipients this year and that we'll celebrate them. That's part of our public outreach and profiling what it is that we actually do out there on the land base. So I also, up here on the slide, and you're probably wondering about that graph there, one of the other things that we've been doing actually consistently going back to the 1990s is we do public opinion polling. We've been conducting that poll every 2 or 3 years. And this particular result is a result of the question that we asked, who do you trust the most to provide you information on BC forests? And so you can see on the graph, we've got the choices were politicians, government managers, forest industry executives, journalists, community leaders, environmentalists, academics, and resource professionals. Without fail, for decades, resource professionals are coming out on top. That's something I think that we should all be proud of and celebrate, but it doesn't mean we're done our work. We have to continue doing our work to maintain trust, to grow confidence. But I think this is a pretty good result for us to be proud of. So I'm going to ask Casey to come back to the mic and talk a little bit about what's happening with registration.
So it's been a year of growth, modest growth for the profession. You can see our membership stands at 5471 at the end of the year, end of the fiscal. We're up 100 members from the previous year. So in spite of the wave of boomer retirements, we're seeing really strong growth in the profession in the enrollment side, and I'll talk about that in a minute. You can see page 16 in the annual report if you want to see some of these. They're presented a little differently. Really balanced kind of age class demographics within the profession. Between the age of 40 and 50, and less than 40 is, so yeah, between 30 and 50 is 50% of our membership. And so, you think about people coming out of school, they're in their 20s, they're coming out and they enroll. They're not usually registered until their late 20s or so. But we do see a lot of growth in that end. Where we don't have a lot of balance is in gender. 1 in 5 members are female. We're around 18% in the registered category. We're more like 35 to 40% in the enrolled categories. So those of you recently out of school will know that it's pretty close gender balance when you're in school. But our older age class in the membership is less well represented. What will be interesting to see over time, especially with a lot of initiatives that are going on out there, is to see if that balance stays as those people mature in the profession, and I think they will. Future around this one. So this is the strategic goal, is to sustain and evolve the profession. So there's a number of initiatives that we have around this. Some future initiatives too. We have associate membership through our act and bylaws, and we're trying to look at ways we can explore associate membership, whether it's for academics right now who don't have the requirement to practice. And we still have some of our long-standing academic members that are really huge contributors to the profession, but we want to see more. We want to get out in those faculties and departments and get more of those people either registered or into a different category of membership. Let's see, there we go. Oh, I think I went too far. No, that was right. Okay. So here you can see we're starting to monitor a few things that we didn't used to monitor. With the new module-based registration process, we're looking at how long people take to get through each component and how long it's taking them overall. Now, we have a lot of people in the system that come out of our old process, the paper-based exam. And so it's not we've got 2 systems that we're still monitoring in there. You can see that people are taking about 38 months to come through on average. Those from non-accredited schools have to take additional coursework. They take a little bit longer, but only by a few months when you average it out. What else is the 85 new members registered? Pretty amazing that we had almost 60 of them here today. Pretty cool moment. The other big news this year is the growth in the enrolled category. So we're up almost, I think it's 43% this year over the long-term average before. So I don't actually know what to attribute that to except workplace demand, but maybe you guys have your theories too. That's certainly put a lot of pressure on our systems to bring people in. And all the people involved with it, the volunteers, the contractors, and my team of staff as well. You imagine over half of those people are from non-accredited institutions. And so they have to go through the credential assessment, all the extra work that goes with that. As far as who's in that system, we've got 662 enrolled members right now and 466 sponsors. So that's a lot of people inside of that system. We're much higher tech than we were 3 years ago, but we're already looking at improvements to that technology. So future for this is definitely improvements to that credential assessment process. Those of you who sponsored those folks know that there's a lot of work in that, and we really want to make it as administratively simple as possible while still making sure the standards are met. As well, bringing some improvements to the content in the modules. We survey people and collect their feedback regularly. As well as that platform, we're going to link it and use it as a launching point for all of our continuing professional development when we start to advance that program in the coming years. So, thank you.
Okay, last slide of highlights. Just to wrap up, reflecting on last year, I wanted to end with our focus on organizational excellence. And, you know, like any good organization, we want to ensure that we're well run and that we're continuously improving. So, you know, and it is my belief that, and hopefully it's more than a belief, that we are a well-run organization. In fact, I would say that was validated last year in two ways. We received 2 clean audits. The government audited us to ensure that we are delivering on the mandate, the things we ought to do. Are we doing them? We passed that audit, no problem. We also have an annual financial audit, which you're going to hear from Lance Nosay in a few minutes about where that ended up. Again, no problems there. A couple of years ago, we also did an internal controls audit that ensured that we have the right things in place to ensure the financial accountability of our organization. So things are running smoothly. In the last year, you'll see that we ended with a modest surplus of 3%. But one of the other huge achievements that occurred this year is that we've been building, as an association for many years, a legal reserve fund. What that fund is there to do is, should we ever need to go to a really intense hearing, you will know that lawyer bills add up very quick, hearing costs, court costs add up really quick. We had a goal of building a strong legal reserve fund, which is just a bit below, I'm going to get the number wrong, but Lance is going to correct me in a few minutes, but a little bit below $1.5 million. We reached that upper limit this year, which means that we are in a really solid, stable place to ensure and to protect the mandate that we're charged with. Something for us to also be, I think, really confident about the role that we have as a regulator. I'd be remiss not to talk about the last year, what happened on, and some of the time and energy that went into responding to the government's Professional Reliance Review and the Professional Governance Act. I look back through my calendar and counted up just official meetings that we had with government. This doesn't count the travel time to get there, the preparation with it, the collaboration that the association did with the other 4 regulators to prepare and have joint messages, not including any of that. But we had 34 meetings with government last year, consulting on the Professional Reliance Review and the Professional Governance Act. It was nearly 80 solid hours of full-on getting down to brass tacks with the government staff. That all happened at the same time as delivering our normal business. And, you know, looking back, I sometimes wonder where we found the time for that. And just lastly, on the communications front, you all see our BC Forest Professional, and I thank you all for the contributions. Many of you contribute to our magazine. We also have external contributors. 77 articles were in our magazine last year across 6 editions. 77 articles that were reviewed by the editorial board to go into that magazine. We also put out 22 editions of The Increment and 2 member surveys. One was around professional reliance, the other was related to the role of the sponsor in our new registration process. So that is a very quick skate across the last year. There's way more that there's just not enough time to tell. If you want to learn a little bit more on some of the details, you can find some printed copies of our annual report and our strategic plan are here at the conference. But also like to just take a couple of minutes for any questions that the audience may have. And I'll ask Casey to join me, depending on what your question is. So we do have a mic if anyone wants to ask a question about any of the stuff that Casey or I presented. Oh. We got a mic coming for you, just one sec.
My name's Mike.
Hi, Mike. Mike from Adams Lake.
That's right. You identified that there were, I believe it was half of the people coming into the profession were from schools that were not accredited?
Correct.
I was just wondering if there are any plans to sort of improve that, to sort of do some work with institutions to improve the accreditation.
Yeah, definitely. It's ongoing. You know, when you look at our history, at one time there were only accredited schools and there was only an RPF and there was a fixed route you came in. And in the last 15 years, that's changed tremendously. I don't know that we could have predicted that shift would occur. But the post-secondary, you know, we're less connected with post-secondary than we were at one time. So it's been important to me to recognize that we need to rebuild some of those relationships. And one of the things we're doing is, you can see on that slide, it's the front page, it's a multi-folding pamphlet, and it talks about the avenues into the profession, either through accredited or non-accredited. So it's a bit of information. We put it in the hands of the faculty advisors, the student advisors, and all the institutions, so that when they're coaching people about which program to take, they'll have some information. I was sitting outside one of the schools recently, and I was going to meet with one of their advisors, and I was listening to them give information to the student, and it was years old information. So for us, you know, the schools are in some cases reaching out to us, but we need to reach out to all of them. Now you can imagine that 60% creates a whole bigger community of schools that are bigger than we used to deal with right across Canada. So it's a lot of our resources to do that outreach. But part of the portfolios and some of our staff positions that we've changed in the last 2 years is specifically designed to address that. So I hope that works. Welcome to your ideas, though.
Any other quick questions? We probably have time for one or two before the president gives me the hook. All right, I'm gonna pause there and just pass the floor back to Casey for life members and condolences.
Yeah. And I do have a slide here for this as well. So one of the things we do is we want to recognize new life members who've been inducted to life membership. We've got a couple of them. Robert B. Cavill, RPF retired, and William E. Dumont, RPF retired. Are they present, either of them? All right, not here. Anyway, if you do happen to know them, congratulate them. The other part of it too, of this part of the presentation, is to recognize our members who passed away in the past year. So if I could ask you all to rise, and I'm going to read the names of the members. W. Graham Blakey, RPF. T. Robert Broadland, RPF retired. Gordon D. Curry, RPF retired. Thomas J. Dealison, RPF retired. Robert D. Dunlop, RPF retired. Gerhard R. Eichel, RPF retired. Joseph E. Griegel, RPF retired. Edward Knight, RPF retired. Vaughn Andrew McCaig, RFT. Ross B. Miller, RPF. Kenneth Milner, RPF retired. Glenn A. Patterson, RPF retired. Sven Isle Rasmussen, RPF retired. Jack L. Robinson, RPF retired. John H. Russell, RPF. Raymond A. Savola, RPF retired. Miss Margaret A. Shamlock, RPF. Frederick T. Stinston, RPF retired. John W. Tuvey, RPF retired. And Richard E. Woods, RPF retired. If you could just observe a minute of silence with me, please. Thank you. Actually, Lance does.
Thank you, Christine and Casey. Could I please have a motion to accept that the annual business report be approved as presented? Can you say your name? Bronwyn? Yeah. Second? Jason? Any questions or discussion? Call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you. Our next item of business is the 2018 financial report, which will be presented by Lance Noze, ABCFP Director of Finance and Administration. Lance.
Thank you, Robin. Good afternoon, everyone. (2018) was a good year financially for the association with a $82,000 surplus. We just heard Casey refer to the banner year we had for new enrollments. In fact, we had 80 more than we had budgeted for, so our revenues were well above budget. We also had some staff vacancies, and that had a positive impact on our expenses. This slide shows how our expenses are distributed over 7 general business areas of the association. Some approximations are used here, but it does provide a good picture of how our financial resources are being employed. This is our annual results over the last 11 years. 6 of the last 7 years have been surpluses. The operating fund balance sheet is healthy, but it did weaken in 2018. Council made a decision to transfer $350,000 out of the operating fund and into the reserve fund. Why? Well, the reserve fund policy, among other things, it establishes a minimum and maximum level for the reserve fund. If it falls below that minimum level, then there's mechanisms to build it back up. If it reaches or goes beyond the maximum level, which is 6 months of annual budgeted expenses, then the reserve fund's earnings will go back into the operating fund. The operating fund had the resources to make this transfer, and in doing so, it allowed the reserve fund to reach that maximum level. So beginning in 2019, the operating fund will have a new source of revenue. And these funds will fare better in being invested in the reserve fund than if they had been kept in the operating fund. So you can see what effect this transfer had made, and Christine, you were right, it's the value of the reserve fund is just under $1.5 million. And by the way, the maximum level of the reserve fund based on the 2019 budget is about $1.39 million. So it's beyond that now. And here is our 2019 operating budget with 2018 actual numbers for comparison. Please remember that our full audited financial statements are posted on the website, so you can obtain a lot of details by having a look there. But we do have time for some questions right now. If there are no questions, I'll turn it back to Robin. Thank you.
Thank you, Lance. You do a fantastic job managing our finance and administration. Could I please have a motion to adopt? Are we live? I don't sound live. Sorry? Okay. Could I please have a motion to adopt our financial report and audited financial statements for 2018 fiscal year ending November 30th, 2018 as presented? Second? Andrew Horsnell, Kevin Horsnell? It's all right. Call the question. Sorry, first of all, any discussion or questions? Call the question. All in favor? Are there anyone opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you. Next task is to appoint our auditors for the next year. Our auditors for the past several years have been D&H Group. Our financial committee recommends that they be reappointed for the next year. Could I please have a motion to appoint D&H Group as our auditors for the 2019 fiscal year? Could I have a mover? Mauro Calabrese, and then Brian Robinson seconds. Are you getting all this? Is someone, you're getting all, attaboy. Thank you. Any discussions or questions? Call the question. All in favor? Are there any opposed? Motion's carried. Our next step is endorsement of council actions during 2018. The purpose of this next motion is to provide closure for the last year and to show that the membership is generally satisfied with the work council has done. I request a motion to move that the actions taken by council between the last AGM and this AGM be endorsed. Can I have a motion? Here we go. Sorry, I can't see you. Kathy, seconder. Brian Robinson again will second. Questions or discussion? Call the question. All in favor? Are there any opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you. Now I would like to call on Michael Armstrong, RPF, CPA, CA, to present the returning officer's report for the recent council election. Michael?
Thanks, Robin. So I'm Michael Armstrong with the Council of Forest Industries, but here representing Tony Wong, who's not able to come. Just as we live in the sort of the new Professional Governance Act world, I thought I'd better just cover my bases. I know there's no forms yet, but I do have the knowledge, skills, and technical ability to read out this report. So this is a memo written to the council. It's from Tony Wong. I write to report the results of the ABCFP council ballot held at the ABC offices on January 11th, 2019. Those who assisted the returning officer with counting the ballots were the scrutineers, Michael Armstrong, Dave Patterson, assisted by staff. I confirmed that the ballots were counted in accordance with the ballot counting procedures established by the association. The total number of ballots mailed in was 37. The total number of electronic ballots was 1,041. The total number of ballots received was therefore 1,078. 5 electronic ballots had no votes for any candidates, leaving a total of 1,073 ballots to count. Of these, none were rejected. I therefore declare the following members elected to the 72nd Council of the Association of Professional BC Forest Professionals. For RPF Councillor, Ken Day, 3-year term. For RFT Councillor, Bowen Sly, a 3-year term. Finally, I request that the ballots be held at the ABCFP offices for at least 30 days after the AGM, after this report is submitted. Respectfully submitted, Tony Wong, ABCFP Returning Officer. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Our next step is to appoint the scrutineers for next year. Our bylaws require the appointment of a returning officer and scrutineers at the AGM. Could I please have a motion to appoint Tony Wong, MRM, NBA, and RPF returning officer, and Michael Armstrong, RPF, CPA, CA, and Dave Patterson, RPF, as the scrutineers for the coming year? Can I have a motion, please? Gary Birch. Second. Candace. Questions or discussions? Call the question. All in favor? Are there any opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you. So thank you. This concludes the business portion of our annual general meeting. We were now going to move directly into coffee with council, but we are actually a little bit ahead of time. So we're gonna take a break for 20 minutes. I'll ask everyone to come back at 3:30. We will ring the bell. The risk of doing this is we might lose you, so we do really would like to see you come back and have a conversation with us, but we'll take the break and we'll ring the bell at around 3:25 to have you come back in, and we'll give you the rundown on how that's gonna work. Okay, thank you.